Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF Hayomi, Bava Kamma DAF Nun Aleph. We are holding on DAF Nun Amid Beis, 4 lines off the bottom of the Yomid. We begin with a story. Hahu Tura, there was a cow, the nafal, that dropped into this irrigation ditch. La Arisa, a ditch, the Deloi, from which water would be drawn to irrigate the fields. And Rashi explains, this ditch was merely 6 tefach deep, so it's way less than your 10 tefach depth required for a boyer, to be liable for the the animal falling into it and dying. So the minimum share of a boyer, as mentioned in the Mishnah yesterday, is 10 tefachim, and here it was only 6 tefachim deep. Shachtei Mari. So the owner of this animal quickly went to the sheikh. He did the shchita in order to have the flesh. Tarafi Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says this thing's a treifa. And Rashi explains why. Because there are 18 types of internal wounds. Yudches treifos. Interesting. Chai treifos. But this animal here, even though it didn't really exhibit necessarily any internal wounds, but an animal which has this sort of sudden drastic drop, it's called risuke evarim. We're concerned that perhaps there was some sort of crushing of internal organs. So until the animal establishes itself as being healthy and viable, we're concerned that perhaps something happened, something went wrong. There was some sort of internal wound which makes it a treifa. So in order to prove its health, it has to you have to leave it around for at least 24 hours, and if it survives that period, it's okay. Now this owner hurriedly went out and shechted the animal before anything could happen. Tafir Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman labeled it a treifa forbidden for consumption of Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman responded, Ishakil Mari, if only the owner of this, the haitura of this animal would have taken kaba de kimcha, a small measure of flour, a kav of kemach, to feed him on to food for the trip. And he would have just gone to the Beis Medrash to learn a little bit. So if he would have traveled to a local yeshiva and learned just the halacha, basic halacha, so if this type of animal who experienced this fall sticks around for 24 hours, then we know it's okay, it's healthy, and it's kosher. If only he would have learned that halacha and would have waited patiently 24 hours and then went ahead with the shchita afsa de letura, he would have been lucky and would not have lost his shoyer, the Bava Kamma, which is worth many kav of flour. So if only he would have invested that little bit of effort, he would have gained. But unfortunately, he jumped into it haphazardly, and now we cannot allow him to have the animal. Bottom line is, Rav Nachman's concern was why? Because the animal tripped into this ditch, but the ditch was only 6 tefach deep. Why would it kill the animal? So apparently Rav Nachman is of the opinion that yesh chavata v'pachas me'asara, the concept of lethal impact, applies even for a depth less than 10 tefachim, which is a chiddush, and it's going to be a kasha from our Mishnah, which provides the minimum to be 10 tefachim. Eisvei Rav Nachman. Rav asked Rav Nachman, look at our Mishnah. If the ditch was less than 10 tefachim deep, if the burr was 9, 8, or 7 deep, an animal falls into it, you're potter. My time of why? Lav mishum d'lesbe chavata. Apparently because there's no lethal impact if it's not 10 tefach deep. That's a kasha on Rav Nachman. No, loy mishum d'lesbe havla. Rav Nachman goes like Rav, which we learned yesterday, holds that the reason for liability in boyer is because of the hevel factor, the stuffiness, the lack of oxygen, the mistiness, the humidity, that makes the victim susceptible to injury and to death. So when it's less than 10 tefachim, it doesn't have the same degree of hevel required to kill, and therefore you're potter. But with respect to the halachos of treifa, certainly there is impact. There is lethal impact, which raises this concern of perhaps the animal being internally wounded. But when it comes to liability for digging a burr in the street and creating a hazard for another animal, we're going like Rav, that you're not chayiv for impact, because the impact occurred with the ground, which doesn't belong to the pit digger. It's called karka ilam. He's only chayiv for something that he personally generates, which is the hevel, and there is no hevel in a shallow burr. Yachi says the Gemara, but if that's the case, there's no hevel, then why does the Mishnah say v'im huzak by, if the animal was injured by falling into this burr, you're liable chayiv? Halas behavla, I thought there's no hevel. Amalei, so he responded, okay, there is some degree, some level of hevel which is sufficient to generate injury and not death. Ein hevel amisa, but there is hevel, v'yesh hevel in a zaken to injure, and that's why he's liable for an zaken. Eisvei comes another kasha, which we asked on Rav Nachman, who seems to hold that there can be even lethal impact with less than 10 tefach of a drop. So a person is being taken out to a skila through the bezin, so they throw him off this roof, which was situated on a structure 2 kaimais. Kaima is the height of a person, so it was double the height of a person. So they used to toss him, they used to push him off that height. V'tani Allah, and the Bryce explains, v'kaima shaloi. In addition to the double floor, there was a third level as well, meaning his own height. So if you add that to the 2 kaimais below, harikan shalosh gives you a triple height, and he was pushed off that height in order to kill him. Now, according to Rav Nachman, that there's a concept of chavat, of lethal impact, even with a drop which is less than, a fall which is less than 10 tefachim. What do you have to push off the person off such a great height? Even less than that can kill him. Well, the Tamech says to them, okay, according to you, 10 tefachim is the minimum, right? Okay, so let them push him off. A 10 tefach structure, why do you have to go so high? 2 kaimes, 3 kaimes. Na'aved asara, let's just use 10 tefachim. Oh, there must be a special reason why we go higher. Either way. Elok Rav Nachman. Damar Rav Nachman. Oh, it's Rav Nachman himself. Damar Rav Nachman. Amar Rabba Ravoa. Amar Krova. Haftarach Kamoicha. Even when it comes to applying capital punishment, we're still sensitive to the person, and we exhibit sensitivity. We choose the most efficient, expedited, way of death, and the higher you go, the quicker it goes. So that's what we do. Yachi. If that's the case, let them really bring it really high and push them off the tallest building. Mishum de minville, because it results in a very undignified, consequence, and therefore we don't do that. So we sort of strike a balance, not too low, not too high. Eisvei comes another question of Nachman, who says even a less deeper fall, even a fall of less than 10 tefachim can create misa, can generate death. So the pasuk speaks about the chiyuv of making a railing, a makeh. Be careful so that nobody falls off the roof. So it's only a concern, only a chiyuv if there's a way to fall off the roof, to the ground below, but as opposed to falling onto the roof. Kate said, for instance, let's say the street level was 10 tefach above my roof, and at most a person can only fall into my roof from the street. Potter, so in this case, there's no chiyuv of makeh. But the other way, if the street level is 10 tefach below my roof level, which would entail a person chas v'shalom falling off my roof into the street, chayiv, that generates a chiyuv of makeh. Now, why speak of a 10 tefach fall? If chavata applies even less than 10, which would appear from Rav Nachman's story with the cow falling, sinks into the 6 tefach ditch, so why is the share of asara a precondition for chiyuv of makeh? Even less than that is dangerous. He responded, Shani bias you're right. Even less than a 10 tefach fall can be dangerous. But here, the point is, shani bayis, the chiv of mak is specific to around the railing on top of a house, a permanent dwelling, which creates real hazard because people, assume things are safe and it's a regularly used area. It's not just a cliff, a high point, which doesn't need a makat. The Chazon Ish explains this. He says, a person knows to be careful. You walk on a high area, you're aware, you're cognizant of the danger involved. You don't need a makat. Every place there is some danger, but there's a house. It's established. It's a dwelling area. It's a residential. People tend to assume it's safe to be used, and they sort of lose sight of the fact that there is danger involved. So there, the Torah obligated one to affix a makkah, and in order for it to be considered a bayis, it needs to conform to the dimensions of a bayis. And the minimum height of a bayis is 10 tefachim. You can't live in a room less than 10 tefachim high. So that's the point of 10 tefachim. Nothing to do with whether it presents danger or not. Maybe even less than 10 presents danger, but it's a precondition for it to be considered a house, which triggers the chi of mak. Okay? A house less than 10 tefach high is not a house. Yachish says the Gemara, okay, so hashtanami, so let's say the house from the outside is 10 tefach high. What are you gaining? Because inside it's still less than 10. Deduct, for the roof, for the ceiling. Hashtanami, they have a mavroya, so let's say it measures up to 10 tefachim on the outside, so the outside dimension is 10 in height, but dal minei tikrum, as if you have to deduct the ceiling and the paint and the cement, whatever, mikavoy, which is on the inside, which gives you a room less than 10 tefach high, which doesn't really qualify as a house. They have a asara. Almost he says, we're speaking that he dug out the floor and lowered the floor, so ultimately you have 10 tefach inside as well. If that's the case, if you're digging, then so even if there's less than 10 tefach outside, you can still have a case that they have 10 tefach height on the inside. You dug 5 tefach inside. I mean, so why do we have this precondition of the house being 10 tefach high, even if it's 6? But if you dug 4 on the so the Gemara backs away from that pshat. You're right. The point is that only a 10 tefach, drop presents a lethal, danger, lethal concern, and that is why 10 tefachim is the precondition for chi of mak. So then back to the question. So why did Rav Nachman concern himself with this animal who merely fell 6 tefachim into the ditch? The answer is it was really 10. You know why? Eloheinu Rav Nachman savar, he holds like this. Mikresa the tur la'ara. It was a cow, right? So there was a gap from the belly until the floor. That's first of all. How much is that? Mikresa the tur la'ara, from the belly until the ground. Kamavi abba. That's 4. Arisa deloy kamav. What about the irrigation ditch? It's another 6 shita. Gives you a total of 10. Ha'asaras, an animal, the body actually dropped 10. There you go. Ishtakach. So it turns out that it hit from it impacted from a height of 10. Okay, so that's the bottom line. Of course, the chavata for misa requires 10, as per Makkah, as per Rav Nachman's story. Elamas nisan netoni. What about our Mishnah, where it says ma bor shehu kedei lahamas yutfachim, af koil sheish bor kedei lahamas yutfachim, that the bor needs to be 10 tefachim deep. Why? Why 10? 6 should be enough. Plus the gap between the belly and the floor. B'shita namisage. Why isn't 6 enough? The answer is Amri. The answer that was given was Masnis in the Mishnah speaking, the Ganda Labur, the animal was sort of on the floor rolling into the bur. So there was no gap between belly and floor. In that case, you need that the bur be actually 10 tefach deep to create lethal concerns. Continues the Mishnah. Bur shel shnei shutafin. You have a bur that belongs to 2 partners. Avar olav arishav lekiso. So Reuven, used it and left. Vasheni lekiso. So Reuven didn't cover it, nor did Shimon. And the Gemara explains that Reuven actually handed over, control to Shimon, put him in custody. Hasheni chayiv. So Shimon is responsible. Now, how do we even get to the point of 2 people owning a bur? Amri, so the question was, Bur shel shnei shotafen heichem mishkachas. How could you have a bur owned by two people? So Hanicha Yisrael and Rabbi Kiva. So all is good and well. If we hold like Rabbi Kiva, the Amar says, Bur b'shusei chayiv, that a person is responsible even for a pit dug in his backyard, which he made accessible to the public. So you can have mishkachas. You can have b'chatza shel shneim, a jointly owned property, u'bur shel shneim, and two people own the bur as well. If kiru rishuson, and they opened up their rishus for public access. V'lo if kiru burim, but they held on to the bur. So you have two people owning a bur, and are jointly responsible. Elo Yisrael and Rabbi Yehuda Kessler. If you go according to the other opinion, that the only time you chayiv is for a bur in the street, as opposed to a bur dug in private property. So you can never have a bur which is jointly owned by two people. How could you ever be liable for a bur b'shas rab only in the street, right? Well, bur b'shas rab, bur shel shnei shotafen heicha mishkachas lo. How could you ever have a bur in the street owned by two people? It's inherently ownerless, right? Well, either shavu shliach tarvayu. Suppose Reuven and Shimon both made a shliach. V'amrlen, they told him, Zil kirilon, go dig a bur for us. V'azal karu, and he did it for them. Well, they're not liable. If somebody does an avera for you, you're not responsible. He should have listened to Hashem and not to you. So there's no liability at all. And let's say Reuven dug 5. Shimon added another 5. Well, in that case, Shimon totally takes over the bur. There's no joint liability. There's talku masa Rishon. Rishon's actions are totally gone because Shimon totally, overtook the bur. So once again, it's not a partnership. Now, Hanicha Rebbe is going to be a machlekes coming up between Rebbe, who says that if Reuven, let's say, digs a bur 9 tefach deep, which can harm but can't kill, and Shimon comes and adds another tefach and makes it a lethal bur. So according to Rebbe, in this case, when it comes to the bur damaging, causing harm, Reuven and Shimon are both responsible because both sort of contributed to the nezek capability of the bur. So Hanichal Rebbe, according to Rebbe, it works. Ulam Zachan was speaking about damages. So Mishkachas, you can have a case where two people are liable, as we explained. Elul Rebbe, Ulamisa, but even according to Rebbe, if the bur actually killed, only Shimon is liable because he added the 10th tefach and made it into a lethal bur. So Reuven is out of there, Shimon is in there, just Reuven. Or according to Shittas Rabbanon, who hold that Shimon, who added the 10th tefach and turned it into a bur that can kill, he's totally liable for everything. He sort of overtook the entire bur, bein lamisa, bein lamzakin. So either way, once again, how do you have a jointly owned and jointly, liable bur? Amar b'yechanan kigon she'akru shnein chulivas achas v'shlimu l'asara. So basically, he had a pit 9 tefach deep. Reuven and Shimon both grabbed the shovel and they flipped out the 10 tefach. They turned it into a bur asara. So they both physically, actually generated that bur, and therefore it's a bur shel shut. Okay, we made mention of Rebbe and the Rabbanon. That got us curious. My Rebbe, my Rabbanon, where do we find this machlekes? The Sani, we have the price. Reuven dug 9 tefachim, and Shimon came and added another 10th. Shimon is totally liable for the entire bur. He takes over the whole bur. Rebbe Omer, no. Depends what happened. Achar lamisa. If the bur killed, only Shimon did that, so he's totally responsible. If the bur caused harm or injury, well, Reuven also contributed to that because his bur could have done the same. So they're both jointly liable. My time at the Rabbanon. The question is, why do Rabbanon say that if Shimon merely added a 10th tefach, he's totally responsible for anything? Why? It could have harmed without him too. We have a pasuk, the makra. If a person opens up a pre-existing pit in the street, or he digs one, why this repetition? If he's chayiv for just opening a bar, uncovering a pre-existing pit, which was already there with Adam, certainly he's chayiv for digging a bar. It's coming to teach you that in the case where he was kairach, it was already dug, and he added another layer of depth. Silek Masarishain, the Torah holds him liable, only he's responsible. He certainly takes over the bar, completely assumes custody and liability. The Gemara later will tell us it's specific to a case where the first fellow only did a 9 tefach bar, and the second one came along and sort of upgraded it to a bar that can kill, so now he takes over the entire bar, and whatever happens, it's his business. No, the Rebbe. How does Rebbe respond to this drasha, which says Ki yiftach v'chichre? Amalach responds, Hana mitzrach tzrichi kedam rinan. There's a reason why the Torah actually, lists the Pesach and the Korah separately to tell you certain halacha, as we learned yesterday. For Rabbanan, no. So the Rabbanan also needed for that rush. Ella hainu time the Rabbanan. Rather, we look for a different source. The Rabbanan learned from a different pasuk. Amakro ki yichri ishbar. One man dug the bar, singular. Echad lo'ishnaim. Only one is responsible, not two. For Rebbe, what does Rebbe do with that pasuk? It's coming to tell you that only if a man digs a bar is liable, but if an animal digs a bar, the animal owner is not liable. That's why it says ish. For Rabbanan, they respond trei ish ksivi. It says twice ish in the pasuk. Trei ish bar ksivi. It says ki yiftach ish bar, ki yichre ish bar. One of them is coming to tell you that only the second digger is responsible. For Rebbe, what does Rebbe do with the double ish? Well, it's just, symmetrical language. I did the chsiv high, because of high. Once it says it once to teach you, to exempt the animal who dug, so it says it a second time as well. Asks the Gemara, okay, I understand that it's singular, only one person is responsible for a pit at a time. But how do you know it's the second person? Maybe it's the first person that's going to be responsible, because he initiated the pit. Maybe it's not coming to hold the second person responsible. Maybe only the first person. He can't suggest that. The pasuk says, the pit that he dug killed the animal. So we're speaking about the one who created a boyer of Misa. Hahuduk of Misa, the one who added the 10th tefach number 10, which turned it into a killer. He's responsible, and only he's responsible. Asks the Gemara, well, this pasuk is needed for something else. When look at the Rava, let's say we have a korban which got a blemish and is going to be redeemed. So bottom line is, you can't feed it to any animal. So if that animal dies, you have to bury it. So if a shor psuli amigdashim falls into a bur, you're not liable. Why? Shenema, the pasuk says, "V'amesi eloi," because he keeps the nevela. B'misha amesh eloi, and we learn a drasha that only liability and payment only applies to an animal which allows you to keep the carcass as opposed to psul amigdashim. So it's a drasha, and it's needed for that. Amris, the answer is like this: you can learn two things from the same words. V'lav b'mila shamas mina. So, but by default, you also learn the other thing in the same pasuk, the Yehuda Avad Misa Askinan, that the one who created the bird that can kill, meaning the last fellow, the one who added tefach number 10, he's responsible, he is liable. So we learned that, and also the fact that you cannot be liable for psul mikdashim, which doesn't allow him to keep the nevela. So bottom line, Reuben dug 9, Shimon added a 10th tefach. Well, what happened now? If it harmed, if it damaged, Rebbe says both are chayiv. If it killed, only the second one was chayiv. Rabbanon say, either way, only Shimon is totally chayiv. Ton Rabbanon. Here comes another case. Echad ha'chayv bar asar. Reuben dug 10, which can harm, which can injure and kill. So it's a complete bar. Uba acher v'shnim l'chaf. Shimon came and added another 10. Now it totals 20. So he didn't really change the status of the bar. He just made it deeper. Uba acher v'shnim l'shleishim. Levi added 10 more. Kulan chayav, and they're all equally responsible. V'ramini, we have a kasha. V'raminu. Echad ha'chayv bar asar. Reuben dug 10. Uba acher v'siyed d'chiyed, and Shimon comes and added trim and moldings. Acher chayiv, only Shimon is chayiv. So the Gemara figures at this point, perfect match to Rebbe and the Rabbanon. Are they both liable, or only the last one? Lema, perhaps we'll say, ha-Rebbe, first brisa, where they're jointly responsible. That's Rebbe Shita. Ha-Rabbanon, the second brisa, where only Shimon is chayiv. That's the Rabbanon. Amar Azbid, no. Ha-Rabbanon. Both brises can certainly be working with the Rabbanon. Here it's very different because, remember, in the Rabbanon's case, earlier, Reuben only did 9. It wasn't a full bar, but here Reuben did 10. Complete bar. It's kind of like Amar Rabbanon. You know when the Rabbanon consider only Shimon responsible? When Reuben didn't create a full bar that can kill. So Shimon completed, he takes over. But if Reuben created a full 10 tefach bar that can kill, even the Rabbanon agreed to Kulan Chayav, and then Reuben and Shimon are jointly responsible. Well, says the Gemara, what about the second brisa that we just mentioned? This fellow thickened it and added, ornament. The Bava Kamma it was already a 10 tefach bar. And The Brisa still says Shimon is fully responsible. Why? How does that fit with your explanation? Amri, the answer is like this. Hasam, you're wrong. Hasam shalei hayaboy hevel lemisa. It was a deep bar, but it was a bit wide. Rashi says, Tosfos says it was wider more than deep, in which case there isn't enough mist and hevel and stuffiness that can kill. This second fellow was sort of thickened the walls by adding all these ornaments. He narrowed the bar and generated that stuffiness and lack of oxygen, which killed. So he actually made it a bar of Misa, which triggers his and only his liability. There's another version of Rav Zvid's teretz. Rav Zvid havav Rabbi. Both prices that we just mentioned could be going like Rabbi, and we'll work it out. Price number one, where they're all jointly responsible, that's perfect, like Rabbi. All people are responsible. The second brisa, which holds Shimon solely responsible, was speaking that it was a very wide pit, which had no hevel at all, not to kill, not to harm. And Shimon came and narrowed it, made it just the right configuration to create hevel for Misa, for Nezaken. So it was pretty much a benign entity until Shimon came along. And even Rebbe agrees in this case, only Shimon is responsible. So bottom line is like this. We have to summarize the sugya. So we have a bar. Okay, so now, if it's only 9 tefach deep, Reuben created 9. Shimon came and added a 10th. So here we have the machlekes. If it injured, Rebbe says Reuben and Shimon are both responsible. If it killed, only Shimon is responsible because he created the killer. According to Rabbanan, it's based on the Gzeres HaKosav, on the drasha. When Shimon turned it into a killer, he totally takes over responsibility for everything. But, says the Gemara, if it was already 10 by Reuben and Shimon added another 10, even the Rabbanan would agree that they're both jointly responsible. On the other hand, if Reuben's pit was harmless and Shimon turned it into a harmful entity, of course, even Rebbe agrees that Shimon is fully responsible. Amar Rav. So let's say Reuben dug 9. Shimon added, like a rim of stones on the outside, on top. And now he created a 10 tefach drop on the inside. That's your classic case. Bono l'machlekes, Rebbe Rabban, this is the machlekes. Pshita, well, obviously, it's the same case as discussed before. Big difference, because he added on top. Perhaps I would think you can differentiate. Lamata, only the previous case where he added a 10th tefach on the bottom. So ultimately, when the animal fell in head first, he was struck by the hevel on the bottom, which was generated by this second person. He created that extra depth on the bottom. But in this case, where he added the tefach on top, so he had nothing to do with the hevel on bottom. So perhaps even the Rabbanan would agree that he's not, fully responsible. Kamashman, the Chiddush is no. Ultimately, he turned it into a 10 tefach deep bar. He's fully responsible. By Rav, here comes another case. Rav wants to know Tam tefach vasilik avon of Mao. Reuben dug 9. Shimon added a 10th, but he stuffed it up. Tam tefach. He sort of plugged up his 10th and restored it back to the 9 tefach a pit which Reuben made. Or in the case of Vasilik Avonov, he added another 10 tefach of stone rim on top, but then he removed it and restored it back to a 9 tefach pit. Ma, what would you say in this case? Mi Amrina Shah would say my Da'avad Shakli. He removed his contribution. So it's back to square one, and only Reuben is responsible. Or you can say Nistalka Masarishan. According to Rabbanan, it's Gzeres HaKosav. Shimon takes over the bar. Reuben's out of there. He's off the scene. The Kamali Kulibashusay, it's totally in Shimon's hands. So even if he now goes and undoes his contribution, he's still liable. He's still the owner. Take it, we leave it unresolved. Omar Rabba Barachan Omar Shmuel. Bar Marta. Listen to this case. So we speak about the hevel, moisture, humidity factor, which is certainly exacerbated by the presence of water. So typically a bar needs to be 10 tefach deep to have the adequate amount of level of hevel to be lethal. What about a bar shmoina? A bar which is just 8 deep. So it's really only 6 of empty space, plus 2 tefach with water, for a total of 8. Chayev. He's liable. You know why? My timer. Kol tefach the maya could trade the abashadami. Every tefach of water generates as much hevel as 2 tefach of dryness. So basically, this 8 has the same level and degree of hevel like a 10 tefach bar in Yochai. Here comes a new question. Let's sort of jigsaw around the numbers. What about a bar 9 deep, of which 1 is water? What would you say in this case? So it's deeper but less water. Since there isn't the same amount as, it's not like 2 tefach of water. Less bahavla doesn't generate enough humidity to sort of compensate for the lack of depth. On the other hand, given the amak tvei, it's deeper than the previous pit. Here it's 9. It's bahavla, so that sort of compensates and adds the hevel factor as well. That's a good question. Or on the other hand, you have bar shiva, a pit of 7, of which 3 are water. So it's shallower but more water. What's the halacha? Shall we say given the added volume of water, given the fish mayim tfeid is more than that first case, ispe havla, so tfeid ispe havla, it adds, an added measure of hevel, and it gives you the same amount of hevel like a regular bar. Or given the amka, since it's not really so deep to begin with, less behavla, it doesn't have the same level of hevel taken, we leave it unresolved. Here comes a new question. When a bar 10 tefach deep can kill, generated by Reuven, Shimon comes along and widens the bar, makes it wider. What's the halacha? Armalisi says, of course he's not chayiv. If anything, Rashi says, tava il of bracha, thank him. Harimiyat havla, he lessened the humidity, the hevel, because he made it wider, more, open and better circulation. Amar lei, well, he says, well, Adara, it's the opposite. Harikira of hezek, if anything, he brought the bar closer to the victim because he made it wider, so it has a wider latitude, and it's more likely now that somebody can fall in. Elamar of Ashi, so Rashi says depends. Let's not decide. It all depends on what happened. Next, let's analyze what happened. If the animal died because of the hevel factor, we have to analyze. If it was the hevel that did it, harimiyat havla. So Shimon is not responsible. If anything, he lessened the hevel, like we explained. But if he died because of the impact, because of the fall, harikir of hezeka, then Shimon is responsible because, if anything, he increased on that because he widened it and made it more accessible. There's another version of this halacha. Amar of Ashi, next the Anan will decide, imahi gisa nafal. Depends from which side the animal fell. If he fell on the side, where Shimon enlarged it, harikir v'hazeka, so Shimon is responsible because he brought it closer. But if he fell from the other side, which was already pre-existing, harimiyat havla, if anything, Shimon should be thanked for lessening the hevel. Itmar comes another question. Bar, you have a pit, sha'im kakarachpa, whose depth equals its width. So let's say it's 10 tefach deep and 10 tefach wide. Rav Yosef, they both had a discussion. Mishmei, they quoted the Rabbi Bar Chana, the Amar was quoting Mishmei the Rabbi Mani. But there was a disagreement between Rabbi and Rav Yosef in terms of what he said. Chad Amar once said like this: there's always enough hevel to kill, unless the width exceeds its depth. So 10 deep and 11 wide, then there's no hevel, there's enough circulation, no hevel. The other one says, there's never hevel unless depth is greater than width. So basically, he's going Makula, that if it's exactly equal, you're good. Whereas according to the first version, equal is no good unless the width exceeds its depth. The Mishnah says a bird belonging to people. Reuben walked by, didn't cover. Shimon takes over. He's responsible. Why? Since when is, Reuben absolved? Why would Shimon take responsibility more than Reuben? Rabbi Yosef. Once again, these two Amiroim, the Amr Tavai, they're both quoting Mishmei the Rabbi Chana, the Mishmei the Rabbi Mani. Chadam want to explain like this. Why is Reuben absolved? We're speaking that Reuben noted that Shimon was now using the bar, so he walked away. Shimon takes over. The other one says it's not enough. the only time Shimon assumes full responsibility for this jointly owned bar is if Reuben actually handed Delia. Delia, some Mepharshim learn the cover. Rashi learns that way. Rashba learns the pail. Bottom line is, he sort of transferred responsibility to Shimon. So now Shimon takes over. Ketanoi, which is actually Machlekes Tanoim as well. Hamad l'mayim in abar. Person drawing water from a pit. The boch haveirav amaloi. Shimon walks over and says, Hanachli, let me, when you're done, I want to take over. Vanayad l'mayim, I want to draw water. Kiva shenicha mishtamish pata. Once Reuben notices Shimon drawing water, he's absolved. He can walk away, assuming Shimon will look after the bar. That's not enough. Shimon only takes over when Reuben actually handed over, physically handed over the lid, etc. And we're speaking about a bar which is jointly owned, a bar shutf. So the machlekes and this price corresponds to the machlekes Rav Yosef. At what point can Reuben walk away? But now, what's this machlekes about? Why, according to Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yaakov, would Shimon have to take physical possession of the lid, etc.? Why don't we just say, look, the fact that Shimon is using the bar makes him liable. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov savar yesh breira. He holds that when there's an item which is jointly owned, like a water pit, yesh breira means that whatever Reuben draws is destined for him. Min hashamayim, hashkacha, this is his part. He's not taking from Shimon anything. When Shimon draws into his pail, he's taking his. Yesh breira, it's been verified, it's been revealed that this was meant for him, this was meant for him. Nobody's encroaching on the other person's territory. Hai mididei kamamale, Reuben is drawing his, vai mididei kamamale, Shimon is drawing from his. So when Reuben draws his water and walks away and allows Shimon to draw his water, Shimon isn't really borrowing anything from Reuben. He's not responsible for the entire bar. So they're both jointly responsible. Rabbanan disagree. Ain breira. We never know which water was meant for whom. It's a shutfus. So technically you can say that Shimon, when he draws water, he's really borrowing some of Reuben's water. He's a shayel. And we know that a borrower is fully responsible. So as soon as Reuben notices Shimon using the bar, Shimon takes over responsibility. Amar Avina, Vazlu Tamayu. The very same machlekes that we find here is to be found elsewhere with respect to how to, analyze shutfas. This not we have a Mishnah in the Maseches Nedarim. Hashutaf and Shenadru Anozah Mizeh. Reuben and Shimon jointly own this yard. Okay? And they made a vow, they made a nether. You can't, benefit from anything that belongs to me. Asurin, the konas lachatzer. So they're both sort of distancing from each other. And they cannot even walk into a chatzer, which they both own, because inevitably, each person is sort of benefiting from the other person's. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, no. I'm walking into my space, and you're walking into yours. Yesh breira, right? Zeh nichnas shaloi, v'zeh nichnas shaloi. By Kemiflik Losam Machlekes about, like we explained, it's about breira. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, yesh breira. It can be verified. Hayl nafshei ayil, vayil nafshei ayil. Each fellow can claim that he's walking into his place. Right now, this is mine, right? Given to for my use, and therefore there's no issue of neder. Rabbanon savre ain't breira. You never know. It's sort of like a one big mish, and therefore they both have to keep out of the field of the chutz. Amar Rabbi Lezer, comes a new halacha. Hamoicher bar lechaver. Reuben sells a water hole to Shimon. Kima shemasa loydol yekana. As soon as he gives him the lid, that's a kinyan. Well, what kind of kinyan is that? Hey chadami, what happened? How did he actually purchase? Which kinyan did he employ to acquire the pit? Iba kaspa, was it money? Look at Iba kaspa. So money is kainet, it's real estate. Kesef is kainet. Iba chazaka, was it through use, which is chazaka? Look at Iba chazaka, let that be enough. Look at Iba chazaka, you're right, it was chazaka, but typically the seller has to sort of empower the buyer. Typically the seller must instruct the buyer, go and do the chazaka, he has to sort of consent to that. So here he didn't do that. So instead, in lieu of this, instruction, we say that giving over the lid is enough. We treat it as though the Amar like he told him, like he would have told him, you treat it as such, and therefore it works. In conjunction with the actual chazaka that hold. Okay, let's summarize today's daf. A boyer of 10 tfachim has enough chavata, has enough hevel to kill, and therefore a person is liable. Less than that can injure, can harm, and therefore there's liability for nezakin. Let's say we have a bur which was dug by Reuven, and then Shimon came and added to it. Reuven dug 9, Shimon dug the 10th. Rebbe says, in terms of nizakin, they're both chayv. In terms of misash, only Shimon is chayv. Rabbanan say, based on a pasuk, Shimon totally takes over the entire thing. But the Gemara tells us that in the case where the bur is already a lethal bur from Reuven's effort, in that case, all agree that even if Shimon added another 10 tefachim, they're both jointly responsible. On the other hand, if Reuven's bur could not do anything, all agree that only Shimon takes over and is fully responsible. We had discussions regarding water content in a bur. At what point do we say it makes up for lack of depth? We discussed a wide bur that has no hevel. We discussed a jointly owned bur. At what point would one fellow assume full responsibility? All the best to you, B'suras Tevis, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.